Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. We have about 2 minutes before the hour, so I'm going to give everyone time to get settled in, to get logged in. I've been seeing your chats. John and I were just talking about where everyone is from and just how cool it is to see an international audience. So I see Chicago, Salt Lake City, Seattle. JobScan was actually originally, well, it was founded in Seattle. We originally had our offices in Seattle. We're fully remote now, but we were originally in Seattle. North Carolina, New York, a lot of people from Chicago and Boston. I'm noticing that. Poland. Oh, cool. Hey, Joanna. So let me know also, in addition to where you're from, cool to see. This session is about interviewing. So let me know what aspect of interviewing makes you the most nervous. Kind of curious to hear that, and maybe it's just the whole thing, just the entire interviewing part. But I like to hear that too. Maritza from Ecuador, very cool. St. Louis in Switzerland, cool. Joining from New York City. It's good to see everyone. It's almost 3 o'clock where I am, so it's been a long day with this event, but I have coffee, so I'm ready. I'm ready to make it last. We're going to do this. Closing the interview. Interesting. Okay. Talking to them. Yes, that's pretty much that is my weakness as well. Hi from London. Hello. Hi from Cleveland. Yeah, the whole thing. The tell me about yourself part. Yeah. It's like everyone we kind of know now like how to answer it, but I still feel like what they're looking for. The question is just phrased really weirdly. It's like you don't really want me to just tell you about myself. You want to know, tell me about your career. Yeah, that one's always uncomfortable. Panel interviews. Yes, that would make me very nervous too. Yeah. The question, what's your greatest weakness and why? Yeah, appearing nervous. Yeah, that's good. The interrogation. Yes, nice. Okay, well, it's 3 o'clock now, or we're on the hour, so we'll start. Welcome to this session. I'm Sydney. In case we haven't met yet, I'm a team member here at JobScan. In this workshop, John Ribeiro is going to help you build tools you can use to show up confidently to any job interview. So all of those challenges that y'all talked about, this session will help you to deal with those. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be wondering if this session is recorded. Yes, every session is recorded. After the event, a couple days after the event, you'll get an email with a link to all of the sessions. Now, if you're not a JobScan Premium member yet, we're offering 20% off of JobScan. So you'll see a QR code here, as well as a URL below me. That URL is jobscan.co/promo/standout24. Either scan the QR code or go to that URL and you'll get 20% off of JobScan Premium forever, every month, every quarter, not just the first month, not just the first quarter. So definitely take advantage of that. It's just for this event, so it'll just be running for the next couple of days. Now, I'd like to introduce our speaker for this session, John Ribeiro. He is an executive coach and trainer. He has over 25 years of experience helping professionals unlock their potential. He co authored Zero to Hired and the Canadian Job Search Guide for Professionals, which provides practical insights for career and leadership growth. And he co hosts the Say Yes Movement podcast. So he is an expert. I'm going to hand things over to John as he discusses show up strong, build confidence to nail your interview. John, please take it away.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sydney. Listen, and been reading through the chat, and I'm loving where everybody is from. Everybody's uh, jumping ahead in terms of the questions that I want to ask. So I'm so happy that everybody is here with us today as we go through this presentation. And I know there's been a lot of great information provided throughout the day. I actually popped into a couple of sessions earlier, and a lot of great technical information. But today, I'm going to take you through a slightly different process where we're going to work more on the mindset piece, because I think a lot of it, in terms of the confidence piece, how we show up in the room, changes depending on what we're feeling inside. And where I focus a lot of time and where I work with a lot of my clients is, how do you change the inside part? How do you change this so you can show up strong? And what I'm going to be providing some tools, and I think I saw a question from Alfredo there around how do I leverage some of these tools? How do I show up really powerfully in those conversations? So let's go here. So, where in the world, if you haven't already put it into the chat, but where in the world are you joining us from? I've seen people join us from Kenya, some people join us from, I think Ecuador was one of the sites. A lot of Canadians in the room, so hello. A lot of Americans too, people from Chicago. Seems like a big, a big a big audience for us in terms of where you're joining from. So let me know in the chat, where are you joining us from if you haven't already listed it. Buffalo, New York. Well, hi, Lori, welcome. Yanis from London, UK. Wow, listen, I love coaching people in London. I love the accent. It's such a beautiful thing. We've got Jason from Boston. Oh, you guys are just running through this. Bruno from the Netherlands, sunny Florida. We got Jeff from Boston, Jonathan from South Carolina. Wow, we got Melbourne, Chad. Wow, we got people. This is a global community, and what I love about what we're doing here today. Oh, São Paulo, Brazil. Bom dia. It's just it's a great audience to be around, and I love the tool. I love JobScan. I love what JobScan is doing with the summit and providing this rich information for all of you. So this is fantastic. Melbourne, Australia, and New Jersey, Italy. Wow, the list just keeps coming in. This is fantastic. I love it. I love it. I love it. Calgary, Texas. Hello. All right. Does it Switzerland? Wow. Okay, I'm getting excited. So who's John Ribeiro? And Sydney, thank you for that introduction. But just a little bit more about me. So I am an ICF certified coach. For those that are familiar with coaching, there's a body that governs coaching. It's called the International Coaching Federation. So I'm a certified coach with them. A former corporate employee. I actually spent 22 years working for a large Canadian telecom organization. For the Canadians in the room, the color was red, so maybe you can guess the organization, or you can look at my LinkedIn profile. So I spent 22 years working with them, and I had a great time working with teams and developing people internally. And what brought me into this field of work was an outsourcing exercise that my organization went through in 2008, 2009. And for those of you that remember 2008, 2009, it was a pretty rough time in the economy. And similar to what's happening now, organizations were downsizing, right sizing, whatever word, language you want to use, but they were trying to figure out ways to save money. And one of the things that we were told back at that time was everybody was going to be losing their jobs. We were told in April, everybody's going to lose their jobs in September. And one of the things I started doing with that was starting preparing my team members for that next step, because some of the people had been in roles on my team for 5 years, some 10 years, some even a little bit longer. And we went through the process of preparing people for interviews, getting people, ready. We would do interview preparation. And the one thing I found is, if they could walk into a room confident, right, even though they didn't have all the skills, even though they weren't 100%, fit all the requirements, but if they fit 50 or 60 or even 70% of those requirements, I knew they would be good candidates if they brought in the right mindset, the right attitude, and the right confidence. And what we found is, as we went through this process, as we trained and we prepared everybody, and you guys got lots of information around resumes today, you got information around LinkedIn and how to leverage that as a tool. What I focused on with my team members was really working on the mindset piece. How do you show up powerfully and being prepared and being strong? And that's what I'm going to walk you through today. And just to fast forward, give you a bit of a sneak peek, at the end, in September of 2009, just with the show of numbers, out of my team, I had a team of 25 people. How many people do you think got jobs by September of 2009, within that year? Just put a number in the chat. Just give me a guess, maybe even a percentage, 5%, 10%. Let me know what you think. How many people you think you got jobs at that time? I'm just waiting for some of the numbers to come in. Excellent. All right, good. Well, let me give you a sneak peek. 100% of those people got jobs. Nobody was left behind, including myself, which was great, because 35 people, or 35%, 25%. Oh, there's the numbers. I see all the numbers coming in now. It's 25, 30%, 50%, 100% of the people got jobs. And part of it was because they showed up powerfully. And what I found is, when they would go into these interviews, they would come out, and the hiring manager, some of the people that were interviewing internally, the hiring manager would call me and say, hey, can I take this person right now? They got a great attitude. They got great credentials, even though it was 100% of what they were looking for, but they would be a great fit for my team. And I said, no, you got to wait till September. So give them the job offer, and I guarantee you can get them in September. So that's where that came from. And because of that, I was able to write my book. Zerta hired, created a kind of walk through the entire process in terms of what we did. It also helped me launch my other podcast, which is still up and running, called the Canadian Job Search Podcast, which really helps students and new Canadians. Actually, it's globally downloaded, so people around the world can learn from industry experts, not just myself, but from the interviews that I did with executive leaders, with the interviews that I did with recruiters, everybody within the chain of the recruiting process. Those are people that I interviewed, so it's something you definitely want to check out. Allowed me to co-author 2 books. But who else am I? I am a dad of 3 young adults. I have twin daughters, which are 22, and I have a son who's 25, believe it or not. So I've been coaching and working in the industry for as long as I've had kids, which is kind of crazy. And I'm currently a triathlete in training, so I'm getting ready for my next big event. And one of the things I have is a big mission for myself every year, and I've been doing this for the last 3 years, is really impacting 1 million people every year. So having the opportunity to be here with all of you is a great way to do that, a great way to give back to the community. I'm really big on that because it really does create that confidence that we're all looking for. I did the Wonder Woman. Okay, some people are getting ahead. So Marlene, slow down. We're going to get there. We're going to show you some good tools. So what if I could show you how to level up your interview skills in 2025? Would that be valuable to you? Just give me a yes, or give me a yes, or give me a yes. Just drop it in the chat. Give me a yes. Let me know. Yeah, great comments coming into the chat. A lot of great energy. I love it. And this is what I saw in the other ones too. A lot of great energy just throughout every sessions, which means you're completely engaged, which is actually one of the keys, and I'm going to talk about that. So with this, if you were able to up-level your interview skills, would that be valuable? Yes, Lynn, thank you for sharing that. Wow, the yeses are just coming in. Stacy, thank you. Wonderful. Carlton, Shannon, loving this. Ooh, Rosie, Deb, Angela. Yes, I love the yeses there. Okay, great. So this is what we're going to walk through today. But before we go there, one of the things I want to do is a quick energy check. I know you've been on the call all day. I think we started at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. Eastern time, and it's now Eastern time. It's 4 p.m. Just want to do a quick energy. On a scale of 1 to 10, where is your energy? Are you at a 1? Like, are you starting to fade? Maybe you need some extra coffee to pick you up for the rest of the day. Or are you at a 10? You're just exploding out of your seat. Which one are you? Are you a 1, a 10, or maybe you're somewhere in between? Whew, Angel is a 10. I love it. We got Al Graham is a 4. Anybody else? Give me some numbers. We got somebody who's 100,000 or 10,000. We got a 7. Okay, great. We got some good energy on this call. Some people are 3, some people are 6. So what I'm going to do, we're going to walk through a quick little exercise. This session is actually very interactive. So it's not one where you're just going to sit down and take notes. You're going to be doing that, but you're also going to be using your body to get involved in some of the exercises that we're going to be doing. So here's what we're going to do. So I got the numbers. I love it. Some people are at a 10. Some people are at a 3.158. Ooh, that's an interesting number. That's fantastic. Solid 9, 6.5. So what if I could show you a way to just bring it up 1, 2, or even 5 numbers? Like bring it up 5 points in terms of your energy level. Would you be interested in knowing how to do that? Yes. Linda's saying yes. Okay, we got some other people saying yes. Oh, excellent. Somebody's listening. Okay, if you're getting your teeth pulled out, don't worry about it. Just do this exercise in your mind. Yeah, heck yes. Okay, good stuff. So what we're going to do, I'm going to invite everybody to stand up right now. Stand up. Because part of what we want to do is we want to activate our bodies, right? So if we're sitting all day, it gets exhausting. One of the things, and actually I was talking to a client earlier today about just not having energy and showing up in a non-powerful state, or what Amy Cuddy would call a low power state. And what we want to do is we want to elevate that. So one of the things we have to do is we got to stand up. We're going to get into this in a second. And what we're going to do as we go into this, so there's great work written by the author, Amy Cuddy, who wrote the book Presence. And she has a fantastic TED Talk that talks about high power states and lower power states. And one of the ways we get into these high power states and low power states is really by using our physiology. And it's really simple. And this is, I'm already standing. So this is where my energy is coming from. Because if I'm sitting down, it's a little bit different. I still, so I shall remain seated. Okay, great. I'm going to invite everybody to stand up. And what I'm going to invite you to do is just put your hands on your hip like this. You're going to do the power pose. And the power pose is one of the greatest ways to boost up our energy. It's a great way to lower our cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And we're going to raise up our testosterone, which actually helps us give us more confidence and more energy. I don't think you can hear the music here, but there's a song that I normally play when I'm doing the power pose. So hopefully everybody's standing up by now. We're going to hold this for 2 minutes. And what Amy Cuddy found in her studies is if you hold this for 2 minutes, your cortisol levels will drop by 30%. Your testosterone levels by 10%, or your testosterone levels will increase by anywhere from 10 to 20, 25%, and your confidence and your courage stands up. And what this means in an interview is it gives you that energy, gives you that power to speak more confidently as you're in front of people. It's a great way to just boost up your energy, lower down your nervousness. Because listen, I've been in interviews where I've been nervous too. And as a speaker, one of the things I used to do all the time is I would go into the bathroom stall because we weren't on Zoom. This is when we were all in person. And I would stand in the stall in a power pose for 2, even 5 minutes, just to make sure that when I got on stage, I was able to deliver the best that I could. And it was a great way to ease the tension that was in the room, ease the tension that's in your body. So what I'm going to invite you to do is just take a deep breath. If you're holding the power pose, I'm going to invite you to breathe in. And here's how we're going to increase the impact of this. I'm going to invite you to go back to a time where you felt incredibly confident. And as you hold this power pose, I'm going to invite you to just think about that moment. Because the thing is, you can step into a confident state at any time you want. And if you think about the great athletes that are out there, one of the things they do is they have their movements, they have their poses that they step into as they go into their athletic events. So whether it's basketball, it's baseball, it's cricket, you name the sport, even soccer or football, depending on where you're located, they all have their routines that they do before they get onto the pitch or onto the field. It's a great way to boost your energy. So just take a deep breath, breathe in, breathe out. All right. So for those of you that were at a 5, 6, or lower, where's your energy at level? Where's your energy level at now? Let me know in the chat. Did it go up by 1 or 2 points? And really, that's all we need, right? As we're going into interviews, the one thing that we get, the one thing that we can do to ease our nerves going into the room is just getting into this power pose. So simple. You can do it in the parking lot before you go into the interview. If you're doing a Zoom meeting or a Zoom interview, that's another way to just lower that nervousness, right, before you show up. Bob is saying is at 1,000. I love it. We got a 9, we got a 6. Did anybody go up 1 or 2 points? Some people are feeling the same. All right. So Eric, maybe you want to hold that power pose just a little bit longer. We got a couple of people's numbers that have gone up, which is fantastic. And this is actually a great tool that you could use before you go into the interview. All right. So one of the 3 things that we're going to cover today is how to get into the zone. And I'm going to share a concept called priming with you as we go through this, and you'll know what I mean in a second. We're going to talk about setting intentions that work, and I'm going to talk about how to really get yourself prepared so when you're in that interview, you're bringing the right intention with you. And yes, other speakers have talked about preparation and what to do. I'm going to share some tips there on what you can do. And then finally, the last piece as we go through this is I'm going to share a visualizing success. And it's been a great tool that I've used over and over for a lot of different events. One of the things I did recently back in 2023, I talked about triathlons, somebody mentioned it here, is I used visualization to get through the finish line of a half Ironman. Now, if you're not familiar with a half Ironman, it's a 2-kilometer swim, it's a 90K bike ride, and it's a 21-kilometer run, all at the same time. And one of the things I found is visualization was a great way to get to that finish line. And it's a great tool that you can use too as you're going into those interviews, thinking about the success that you want to have when you're coming out of them. All right, so the first one, or the first concept I want to share with everybody is called getting in the zone, which is called priming. And there's this great book called Before You Know It, written by John Bargh. And John Bargh, he's a psychologist and he is a professor who did a study on what happens to individuals before they show up somewhere. And this concept of priming is really what happens. The things that you do now will influence the things that happen later on. So priming is a process of influencing your thoughts, your emotions, and behaviors by exposing them to a specific stimuli that create desired mental and emotional states. So think about it this way: when you get up in the morning and, say for example, you stub your toe, right? I don't know if has that ever happened to anybody. I know it's happened to me. Especially when I'm like half awake, going through my day. And the thing is, when you stub your toe, it kind of primes you for the next thing. And it's like maybe the water's coming out cold out of the shower. It's like, oh, I just ruined my shower. And then you walk down the stairs and you're getting your coffee ready, and you accidentally knock over your cup. And there's just a trickle effect of bad things that just happen to you because of that initial stubbing of the toe. And one of the things I talked about earlier is if you look at all the great athletes out there, all the top performers in the world, not just athletes, people like Tony Robbins, people like Robin Sharma, so many great individuals. One of the things that they do is they go into and they create a priming process that sets them up for success. And one of the things I've been able to do over the years is I've created a morning priming process that sets me up for the rest of the day. And if you think about it this way, when you're going into your interviews, it's incredibly tiring. It's incredibly stressful. And one of the things that you want to do is, for the most part, we don't really want to go through the interviews. We want to just get to work. We want to be able to show value. We want to contribute to the organization, and we want to get paid, right? It's part of the reason why we go through the process of going through interviews and, connecting with organizations. So one of the things you want to look at is how are you priming yourself for your interview? And a lot of times we're not priming ourselves in a way that is successful. And I'll show you what that looks like. Priming can determine if you're successful or if you're not. And some of the ways or some of the wrong ways to prime yourself is, if you ever sat in a lobby in an organization waiting for that interview, what's the one thing they have up in the corner that's playing? Maybe there's a television, and usually what's on the television? Does anybody know? Has anybody went to where people to have these? Good. Yeah, what's playing on the television? It's usually the news, right? And what happens is, I don't know about you, but when you watch the news, and I typically don't watch the news, but I was recently away and I got a lot of television, and I was sitting in the room, kind of playing the television in the background, regular television, not streaming television. The news, yes. If they got HCTV, that's beautiful. And then for the Canadians, CP24 is a big one for us. The news is always playing in the background. And what you find is when the news is playing in the background, does it make you feel good? I don't know about you, but I've been watching the news lately, and it's actually elevated my stress levels, my cortisol levels pretty high, just because of what I've been hearing. You know, and it isn't a comment about the news and what's happening in the news, but the news isn't necessarily priming you up for success. It's usually priming you with stress. It's priming you with negative thoughts. It's priming you with there's just no opportunities out there. And every time I turn on and I look at the news, it's like organizations are letting off thousands of people, thousands of people here and thousands of people here. The tech the tech sector is suffering. People are suffering and people are losing jobs by the thousand. Now imagine this: if you're going into an interview room thinking about what's happening in the economy and how it could potentially impact you, is it going to help you show up at your best? Right? There's a very good chance it's not. There's a very good chance that you're going to bring that stress in with you, right? Or, the other thing is the way we're priming ourselves is through the language that we're using with ourselves, right? So if we're saying good things about ourselves, and actually if you want to do a quick test, I know one of the things I do when I'm working out, and I try to listen to very positive content. So whether it's podcasts, it's music is a great way to just elevate your spirits and get you into a good positive vibe. But when you're listening to positive things, your body actually, it reacts to that positive information very positively. And what I mean by that is your body actually feels stronger. Here's what I've noticed, and this is my own personal study, is if I'm thinking, negative thoughts, or if I'm thinking about worry, I'm thinking about concern, my body actually gets weaker. And as I'm training for events, I start to slow down. I'm not as proficient, I'm not conserving as much energy, and I get to the end of my training session feeling completely wiped out and exhausted. And one of the things I had to do to flip that around is think about things that were more empowering, right? Listening to things that really help us feel strong. And that's part of the way we can, prepare ourselves better for these interviews that we're going to go to. This is how we want to prime ourselves so we feel strong, right? One of the things I talk about with my clients is thinking about moments where you felt incredibly confident, and replaying some of those memories in your mind, not necessarily listening to the news in the lobby while you're waiting for the interviewer to come down and to pick you up. You want to make sure that this is full of the good stuff because that brings you into the room feeling a lot stronger. And having that awareness around priming, because we're constantly being primed, right? And advertisers know that. When you think about watching an ad for food, they're hitting all your senses, right? When you see food, burgers splash up on the screen, you hear the sizzle, you see the bright colors, you see somebody's face, eating that burger and that big smile and that big grin, and they feel fantastic. That's priming, right? And if you watch enough of those ads, for those of you that watched the Super Bowl recently, if you watch enough of those ads, at some point you're going to have that desire to go get that thing, go get that piece of food. So advertisers know this, they're leveraging this to prime us to make sure that we're picking up their products when we go to the store, right? So you have the ability to set up your own priming rituals that set you up for success. And when you do that, you're going to show up powerfully. Here's a tip, as you're waiting for singing in the shower. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. You can stand and sing before your interviews, but find a tool that helps you feel really positive. Maybe get your favorite song, get you, there's a song, there's a podcast. I listen to podcasts all the time, and I'm always listening to things that elevate my spirit. Or, the other thing you can do as a priming process is really just getting into a place of focus and through meditation and just sitting down and thinking about how you want the outcome of this to show up for you today, right? How do you want to show up when you go into that room? And I'm going to talk about visualization in a minute. But there's just a couple of tools that you can do to prime yourself for success. And, one of the key foundations for NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is really around priming, because priming sets everything else up. So you want to make sure that you have that. And even for myself, every morning, one of my priming processes is moving my body first thing in the morning. There's a ritual that I learned from Robin Sharma, where he talks about the 20-20-20 rule. And the 20-20-20 rule is 20 minutes of activity, 20 minutes of learning, and 20 minutes of meditation. And that will set you up for success. And if you want to know more tools around that, just send me a message. And I'll share some other tools that you could use to prime yourself for success every single day. But a big part of what priming does as well is it gets you into a place of just being present. Because a lot of times we show up into these interviews and we're not fully present because we're thinking about all the other things that are happening out in the world, and you'll see what I mean in a second. But these are all things that are taking away our energy. And I want you to walk into that room feeling incredibly strong. So prime your body. So use your body, whether you're outside singing or, whether you're standing in the shower or you're standing in a bathroom stall. Use your body to activate that confidence. Make sure you're aware of the language that you're using with yourself. And maybe you're coming back from another interview that didn't work so well. When I think about that, and I'll share a quick tip, is when I think about interviews that didn't work out well for me, the one thing I think about is maybe that job just wasn't for me. And maybe there's another opportunity out there. And I know there was another speaker today that was talking about reframing, new mindsets that you got to have as you're going into this process. And maybe that's it, right? So there's always an opportunity to change. So watch your words, watch your language, use your body, show up strong for the interview. So the other part I want to talk about is setting intentions that work, right? There's an expression in this quote, where focus goes, energy flows, is from Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins talks about where you put your energy and where you put your attention is really what shifts your life. And a lot of times we're not focused on the right things. We're focused on things that maybe aren't necessarily working out for us. So one of the things you want to do before you go into the interviews, and I know other speakers have talked about this today, is that you really want to do your research. You want to understand the organization. I talk about understanding mission, vision, values, which is a key part to any organization. How do you align with those things? right? And a big part of being confident as you're going into the interview, a big part of going into the interview is walking in knowing what you're going to be talking about and understanding whether or not that organization aligns with you, right? And a big part, and what I've seen in my own personal experience, when I interview individuals that know nothing about the company, that have no idea what our vision is, what our values are, my question is, in this day and age, based on this technology and the information that's available to all of us, why doesn't this individual know any of this information? So it's a big part. You got to make sure that you do that, and you can find that information. It's readily available for you online. There's a site that I use. It's not showing up on the. Oh, okay, there we go. There's a website that I use called Comparably, where they actually look at organizations' missions, values, and what other individuals are saying about that organization. I'm just using this example of Amazon, but Amazon's got a great, they got a great vision in terms of what they want to create for the world and how they want to stand out and be different. So that's, that part of it adds to the intention that you want to bring in. The other piece, when it comes to intention, is get to know the people that are going to be interviewing you, right? A lot of times we walk in the room and we're meeting people for the first time. And for a lot of you, I'm meeting you for the first time. I don't know you. So typically, one of the things I would do, even as I'm looking for work as an entrepreneur, I'm connecting with organizations and individuals, I will research the individual, right? I'll look at their work history, I'll look at their interests, and I'll try to understand what some of their challenges are. Because a lot of times, if we know what their challenges are, we know how we can bring our talents, our skills, our experience to solving some of those challenges. And one of the greatest tools out there right now, and I know there was a speaker that talked about this earlier today, is LinkedIn. You really got to do your work, not only to showcase what you have in terms of skills and experience, but also how you're solving other people's problems. And, the one question I get asked is, well, what if I don't know, or what if I don't know who's interviewing me? Right? Does anybody ever face that kind of question? Um, just ask the recruiter, ask the person that's booking that interview with you is who's going to be interviewing me? Can I get their names? I'd like to do a little bit of research on them. Because the truth is they're researching you, right? We know, I think one of the statistics I saw earlier today, between 85 and 90% of recruiters are looking at your LinkedIn profile and digging deeper into who you are, right? So why wouldn't you do the same with the employers that are going to be interviewing you? Take that time, get to know them a little bit better so you can open up and have instant rapport with that individual when you're connecting with them. And really, that's what it's about, because one of the things you're going to be looking for as you set that intention to create that connection is building items or finding common points that you can connect with, that you can work off. And the truth is, I got a job years ago because one of the connections I made with the interviewer was we both went to the same high school. And it was so funny because he was a rugby player, I was a rugby player, and at the start of the conversation, I'm like, "Hey, you're PJ. You played rugby at this high school, and you were one of the backs. In rugby, they have different positions." He's like, "Yeah, how do you know?" I go, "Because you were 2 years older than me, and I admired how you played on the field." And the truth is, that whole interview was really about rugby. And our coach at the time, which is Coach Turlo, um, our whole interview was making that one connection and using that as a connection point for the interview. And really, it came down, it was pretty much a reminiscing session. And at the end of it, he said, "Look, as long as you pass the technical pieces, you're in." And I'm like, "Okay, sounds easy enough." And I've used that strategy over and over as I went into other interview processes with other leaders, other leaders within the organization. And having that common connection is a great way to do it. So you want to make sure you do that. Helps you create more connection with that person. And then the other piece is you want to look at the organization itself, maybe some of the challenges that they're facing. So you want to make sure you go through any news articles that they may have. And if you're not familiar with Google Alerts, you want to turn that on that organization or even that particular sector of the organization. So if it's IT, if it's HR, if it's finance, if it's supply chain, whatever field you're applying to, put that into your Google Alerts so that information comes up whenever there's anything posted in the media about them. You also want to look at who in your network can connect you with people inside that organization to get a better understanding of some of the challenges that they're going through. And sometimes if we dig deep enough into our network, we will find those individuals. They're people that will openly, and for the most part, 80 to 90% of people that I've reached out to on LinkedIn, if I ask them for, a 10 or 15 minute conversation just to learn a little bit more about them, and that's a whole other presentation I can do on informational sessions. 10 to 15 minutes, my success rate in getting those conversations booked is about 80 to 90%. So 15 minutes just connecting with people in the industry. Who do you know that knows somebody inside that organization? And they say today we are 3 degrees of separation from everybody because of social media. So it's a great way to connect with people. And then doing the LinkedIn thing and making that connection and digging a little bit deeper so you can learn more about those people and that organization. And what that does, it brings you to the point where you get to deliver value. And that is ultimately the intention as an employer. One of the things that I always look for in individuals when I was hiring people for my team was what value do they bring, right? Yes, I'm looking at their experience, I'm looking at their skill set, I'm looking at how they integrate with the rest of my team, but really how are they bringing that value? And your job as the candidate is to make sure that you're showing how you add value, right? There's a challenge or an issue that they're going through, and you're the solution to that challenge. That's ultimately that's the intention that you need to bring in with you. And I know one of the other speakers mentioned that it's not about you, it's about them. And really, this is what value is all about. As you set that intention as you go into that conversation. All right, so this is the final piece. I believe we're almost at the end point of this presentation, but we're going to talk about visualizing success. And I love visualizing success because it's a great tool that kind of helps you eliminate some of that bad stuff, helps you eliminate the ants or the automatic negative thoughts. A lot of times we think about, interviews, or maybe you haven't had good interviews recently, and typically when people reach out to me and they're looking for coaching is because they've gone through the interview process a few times and it just hasn't worked out for them. And a lot of times is we don't, the one thing you have to acknowledge is the attitude and the way we feel inside is what shows up on the outside. And sometimes we have these ants that are crawling, these negative thoughts that are kind of crawling through our minds that are taking up space, and they're not allowing us to show up powerfully. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to get these ants out of the way. We want to just get rid of them, and we want to make sure that they're eliminated. So one of the things we have to do is we have to train our brains a little bit, right? We talked about this already through priming and making sure that we set ourselves up to success by having these rituals, these processes that enable us to show up strong. So one of the things you want to do is you start to visualize, and actually I'm going to show you what this looks like in a second. As we visualize that success, is we want to incorporate some emotion into it, right? Because it isn't just a job, right? We spend more time at work than we do with our own families. So, it's more than just a paycheck. This is a way of being. And for a lot of us, for myself, I worked for an organization for 22 years. And it took me almost 2 years to create a new identity after working for them for 22 years. Because I didn't know who I was without them. And I had to redefine myself. And I had to change a lot of what I was experiencing in my mind, right? So here's what I'm going to invite you to do. So I'm going to invite everybody to just close their eyes for a quick second, okay? You could be seated, you could be standing, you could do, wherever you're at. That's where I want you to be. Just close your eyes for a second and pretend like you're holding a lemon in your hand, okay? This is how powerful visualization is. You're going to hold the lemon, you're going to feel the texture, you can see with your mind's eye the color of the lemon, okay? And what I'm going to invite you to do is to bring it up to your mouth, and I'm going to invite you to bite into it. And I want you to feel that lemon just kind of squirting around in your mouth. Maybe you're doing a bit of a face as you're biting into that lemon without actually holding that lemon. Is anybody experiencing that squinty face from biting into a lemon? Just let me know in the chat. I know it just takes a second, but really bite into it. And if you really enjoy the taste of lemons, take a second bite. Really enjoy the flavor of the lemon. I'm just waiting for the chat to show up. Good. All right. How's the lemon tasting? Is it good? All right, good stuff. So what happens is, yes, thank you. I think it's Salua. Yes, Robin, Maria, Diana, thank you. Listen, our mind is so powerful. We don't utilize it as well as we should because we don't take that time to really think about what it is we want in terms of success, right? So the visualization successful comes from thinking, feeling, and actions, right? And we can play this all out in our minds, right? And I've done this for interviews as well. As I went into job interviews, one of the roles I had as a consultant was I was the um, what do they call it? Kind of like the VP of operations for a startup organization. And one of the things I did before I showed up for that interview is I thought about how I wanted that interview to go. Right? I thought about the interactions. I did my research. I looked them up. I found out what kind of round of funding that they got to run this startup. Got to learn about the CEO of the organization, the person that was currently in the role, and I did my work. So when I showed up, I had rehearsed the entire interview before I actually got into the room. And it was really just a very natural conversation. It was really, really simple. I thought, I believed, and I did, right? And as we're going into these interview process, one of the things that you want to incorporate into your practice of interviewing is going through that visualization process, right? And it doesn't take a lot of time. You can do it before the interview, ideally a day or two before the interview, before you go into the room, after you've done the research of the individuals you're going to be connecting with, understanding the value of the organization, what they want to do, how you can contribute to that value with your skills and experience, and just walking through that process of sitting across the table from them, reaching out if you shake hands with them, making that eye-to-eye contact. Actually, it's one of the things that a lot of people, especially post-pandemic, are struggling with, is making that eye-to-eye contact, going through that process in your mind. So when you show up and you have your stories, you're going through your stories, you're going through your responses, you're making it a really natural interaction with the person on the other side of the table. And if you can do that, whether it's an individual or if it's a panel, if you know there's more than 2 to 3 people interviewing you, you can go through that process where you're having natural conversations with everybody on the other side just by visualizing it, right? Because you've done the priming work, you've got the right intention, which is around adding value, and now you're playing it all out and rehearsing it in your mind. Now, rehearsing it in your mind doesn't necessarily mean it's just because you rehearse it in your mind doesn't mean you shouldn't rehearse it in person as well, right? You should also go through that process where you get to rehearse the interview process with an individual, doing an interview prep session with the coach. Is one of the things that I do quite often with the people that I'm interviewing with, getting them ready so they know their stories inside out. And the truth is, getting nervous is because we feel like we need to impress the other side, the person on the other side of the table. And the truth is, we don't. We just need to be ourselves. We need to be our authentic selves. We need to know our stories. We need to know our experiences really well. And the truth is, you've gone through all your experiences. You have that, you already have that confidence because you've been in situations that are much tougher than the one that you're in, where you've been incredibly successful. And sometimes you just need to be reminded of that. Sometimes you need to just step in your mind's eye, step through those situations and play them out like you were there, right? And the truth is, your body and your mind will react to the way you rehearse it in your mind. And it's a great tool, not just for job interviews. Of course, you want to use it for job interviews, but it's a great way to rehearse a lot of different things in your life, right? Especially as you're going, especially into difficult conversations with individuals, you want to play it out in your mind. Not all the bad stuff, but how you want it to turn out in a really positive way. So that's a great way to, go through that visualization process. The other piece is you want to add that emotion to it, right? You want to feel the emotion of impacting the organization with your skills and experience. This is what I'm bringing to the table. This is what I have. This is how I'm going to show up. So you can know more about me to understand how I am the right choice for this role. And really, that's what it's all about. So as you're going through this process, you're demonstrating how you have the skills, you have the experience, and you almost want to make them feel like they're making the wrong choice if they don't pick you. Because you're also interviewing them and you want to make sure that they're a good fit for you, right? So feel that emotion as you're going through that visualization process, feeling strong, feeling powerful, doing your power pose before you even step into your visualization process will get you up to a whole nother level. So as we start to wrap up this session, the one question I want to ask you is, what action will you take to prepare for your next interview? Based on what we covered today, what's the one thing you're going to take away and implement right away? Is it going to be the power pose? Is it going to be the visualization process? Is it going to be just the awareness around the priming that you're going to be doing before you show up? Or is it going to be just adding value? Just let me know in the chat. I just want to know, because one of the things I found out years ago is when I went into a training session, one of the things that was incredibly important to me, the one thing that added a lot of value was knowing what I was going to do with that information when I left. So, what are you going to do when you leave today? What's that one thing you're going to take and implement? Not just from this session, but from all the other sessions that you've been participating in today. What's the one thing? Just let me know in the chat. Visualization, priming, beautiful. I love it. We got all of them. All of them. Mohammed, here's the thing. Great. I love that you got that passion, all of the above. But just pick one thing and practice that right now. Because sometimes doing all of it can be a little bit it could be a little bit overwhelming. So just try one thing. Visualization, feeling it. Okay, the power pose, adding value, being present. Ooh, I love that. Thank you, Car. And listening to some positive music, visualization. Oh man, getting in the zone. This is beautiful. I love this. So you guys have an action plan. And here's my piece of advice as you go into, and this is what I do with my coaching clients. Make sure you take this and you action it right away. Right? So whether at the end of this session or at the end of the day, make sure you go through your list. You should, based on all the different speakers that you've listened to, just take one thing and practice it. And if you can do that, you've made your whole day worthwhile, right? So it's pretty amazing. Okay, and finally, and this is the last intention that I want to share with all of you, is express gratitude. One of the things that we go through as we're going through the interview process, it's nerve-wracking, it's challenging, but if someone's sitting across the table from us, we get to do that, right? We get to be in that situation, we get to be in that room, we get to really showcase who we are. And gratitude is, for me, has always been the one thing that's grounded me throughout the entire interview process. Listen, I get to be here. I get to showcase to you what I get to offer and how I'm going to add value to your organization. So a little bit of gratitude goes a long way, especially in those really, really difficult, challenging moments. Okay, so just a quick review of what we covered. We talked about getting in the zone. We talked about setting intentions. We talked about visualizing success. One of the things I'd love to share with all of you, if you want to learn more about the Canadian Job Search Podcast, I've thrown up the QR code on the screen. You can just scan it. It is available on Spotify, but it's also available on all the other podcasting hosting channels like Apple and Google, so you can find them there. And the one thing I wanted to share with you, just as a bonus for being here with us today, for giving me your time to listen to this presentation, is I've reduced the price of the book for the Zero to Hired, How to Successfully Break Through the Interview Process, lowered the price of the book for the next 2 days just for this audience. So I've included the QR code there. It's on Amazon. You can download it locally on your Amazon, wherever you are in the world. But I lowered it, made it really reasonable. I think I've made the Kindle version under $3 or $4, less than the price of a coffee here in North America. And even for the written book, I've lowered the price of that for just under $10 for anybody who wants a copy of it. And that's my thank you to all of you for being here today, participating. And I'm loving the chats. There's so much great energy. And, the one thing I see about, what I'm seeing in the chat too is community, right? People helping others. Really, this is what makes us strong. And if you bring that into the interview with you, you are going to be incredibly successful. Yeah. Tips on interview. Yes, Zero to Hired, Alfredo, it covers everything from interview tips to some of the information that I've covered today in this presentation, really around setting you up for success. So it's a great way to just have some notes. And I am going to be releasing a new book called the Job Search Guide for Professionals in the next week or so. I'm just waiting for my final edits, and that's going to be posted soon. So if anybody wants to learn more about me and they want to learn more about how to work with me directly, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's one of my preferred channels. But if there's anything else that I can help you with, I'd love to do that for you. All right. Good stuff. Thank you, Sydney.
Yeah, thanks, John. That was awesome. Reading the comments, people really appreciated the energy, the positivity. So that was awesome. We have a few minutes left for questions. As a reminder, there's a 20% off code for JobScan Premium, so you can scan the QR code. The URL is also below you, Standout25. So you'll get 20% off job scan monthly or quarterly, whichever plan you select. That's just for this event. So it'll expire the next couple of days. I saved a few questions for you, John. We have maybe like 3 or 4 minutes. So
Yeah, for
the
sure.
first one is how does one not lose confidence after presented with an unexpected question? What would you say to that?
Wow, that's a great question. Listen, there's always going to be the unexpected questions. One of the things I do, and this, I'll just share from my own personal experience, if I don't necessarily have a response, I'll actually say, hey, can you give me a minute to think about it? That's one way to do it. The other thing I also do is, can we come back to that question later on? Because sometimes what will happen with interviewers, and I've done this, sometimes the interviewer themselves aren't clear in terms of how they're asking the question. And sometimes they need to rephrase it. So you can ask them, hey, would you be okay to rephrase that question in a slightly different way? That gives you extra time to think about it, and it gets you extra time. The thing is, if you're doing all your work, and here's a quick tip for everybody, I didn't share this, but if you go to Google, right, and you type in whatever field or industry that you're in, search for the top 10 or 15 interview questions asked for that particular role. And what I find is most people, you'll find the top 10 most common questions that you'll be asked. And the truth is, most employers, most hiring managers, when they're asking you those interview questions, they're asking you a variation of those questions. So as you're going through the preparation process, one of the things you want to do is you want to maybe ask that question in a slightly different way. So that way you'll be prepared when you show up in the room. And if you don't know the answer, be honest. I don't have an answer for that right now, but I'd love to get back to you after the interview to share the response. So that's another way of keeping that connection, creating that follow up with that employer.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we're pretty much at time. I got to let people get to the next session, but thank you. That was so much information. And again, people loved everything. Reminder, the whole session was recorded. So you'll get an email afterwards with links to the recordings. It'll have all of the information you need. So thanks, John. The next session that we're having is with Jane Jackson. She's going to be covering, I don't remember actually. Let me pull it up. Jane will be talking about navigating career crossroads, make the right choice with career clarity. So I'll see y'all over there. Thank you so much, John.